When I woke up in the hospital, the lights above me buzzed like angry bees, and the monitor beside my bed screamed every time my heart remembered to beat. 3 days. That's how long my family stayed silent. And then, when the nurse finally handed me my phone, the first thing I saw wasn't a missed call. It was a beach photo. My parents, my siblings, sunlit and smiling, with the caption, "Just the peaceful ones today." They had erased me. But what they didn't know was what that erasure was about to cost them. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever felt the sting of being betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you first. Because what happened after that photo, the lies, the panic, the unraveling turned my life inside out in ways my family never saw coming. I didn't always know what silence could cost. Growing up in the Hartley house, silence was just the air we breathed, thick, heavy, and full of things we weren't allowed to name. If you walked into our living room on any given night, you'd think we were the perfect American family. The TV humming in the background, the smell of Caroline's lasagna drifting through the house, my dad flipping through cable news like it was scripture. But underneath all of that, the ground was already cracking. One of my earliest memories is of a dinner when I was 8. The table was cluttered with mismatched plates because Caroline liked homespun charm, though she never actually washed the dishes herself. I remember Dylan talking about his school soccer game, embellishing wildly like he always did. He said he'd scored the winning goal. In reality, he'd tripped over his own shoelace and collided with the goalie. But everyone laughed anyway. Gregory ruffled his hair. Caroline clapped her hands lightly, as if a celebrity had entered the dining room. I had brought home a perfect spelling test that day, 100% with a shiny gold sticker. I waited for someone to notice. I held the paper in my lap, edges digging into my knees, ready for praise that never came. When I finally said, "I got a perfect score," Caroline didn't even look up from cutting Dylan's pasta. She just said, "That's nice, honey," in the same tone she used when thanking telemarketers before hanging up. I swallowed that moment whole. I didn't know it then, but it would carve deeper than I could imagine. By middle school, Dylan had become the center of everything. Gregory believed in raising a strong man, which apparently meant rewarding any behavior that wasn't mine. I was the dependable one, the helper, the girl who remembered dentist appointments and kept Ruby entertained when she cried. Ruby was sensitive. She bruised emotionally at the slightest disappointment. So Caroline hovered over her while expecting me to be the big sister and carry any load she didn't want to deal with. I internalized it, as kids do. I learned to be useful, to anticipate needs before they became demands, to keep my voice low and my hands busy. In high school, I started working part-time at a diner 2 towns over, wiping down sticky counters and smelling like pancake syrup until midnight. I told my parents I needed the job for experience. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want to ask them for anything. I didn't want to give them another reason to think Ruby or Dylan was more deserving. When I saved enough for a cheap laptop, I left it on the kitchen counter one morning. By the time I came home, Dylan was using it for online games, shouting instructions into a headset. "It's for school," I reminded him. He shrugged without looking at me. "I need it for streaming clips. You can share." Caroline overheard but just smiled. "Be generous, Lena. He'll give it back." He never did. Thanksgiving that year was a mess of burnt casseroles and mismatched expectations. Ruby cried because her pie wasn't praised enough. Dylan got a brand new leather jacket just because your father wanted to surprise you. I got a scented candle. The label was still half peeled off, like someone grabbed it from a bargain bin on the way home. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself gifts weren't the real measure of love. But deep down, something stung like a splinter I couldn't reach. The financial crash came when I was finishing high school. Gregory's real estate deals evaporated overnight. The house got quieter, colder. Caroline insisted we present stability, even as bills piled like snowdrifts. I was accepted to a good college and left a folder of scholarship paperwork on the coffee table. 2 days later, I found Gregory in his office, shredding credit card statements. He looked stressed, sweating through his shirt. "Dad, did you see my forms?" I asked. He barely looked up. "Handled it," he said. I didn't understand what that meant until months later, when a loan officer called asking about the remaining balance on my account. I learned that the money I'd saved money from years of late-night shifts was gone. Gregory used it to pay off his debts. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just stared at me, eyes tired and unyielding. "Family helps each other," he said. "You'll make it back." That night, I sat on my bed with the lights off, listening to Ruby laugh at something on her phone in the next room. My chest felt tight, and for the first time, I wondered if my family loved me or if they loved what I could provide. I didn't know it then, but that question would return years later, sharper than broken glass. College should have been a fresh start, but for me it became another extension of home responsibility without respite. Even before the first semester ended, Caroline called crying because their electric bill was overdue. Gregory called next, saying he was ashamed to ask but had no other choice. Dylan wanted new equipment for his streaming setup. "Just a small loan," he said, though nothing he borrowed ever made its way back. Ruby emailed me once asking for money for textbooks, but later posted photos from a weekend trip to Miami. I told myself maybe she bought cheap books. Maybe she found a deal. But the truth sat in my stomach like a stone. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself. It was never good news. Never a house school, or "we miss you." Only some variation of "can you help?" followed by "don't tell the others I asked you." The weight of those secrets settled on my shoulders until I walked around campus, feeling like my back might snap. During winter break, my sophomore year, I came home to a house that smelled like melted pine-scented candles and microwave leftovers. Caroline had decorated every corner in holiday sparkle cheap garland. Glittery ribbons, fake snow, but it felt hollow, like staging for photos instead of celebration. She was already planning our family Christmas picture, complete with matching sweaters she bought on clearance. Dylan complained that the green one made him look washed out. Ruby said hers was itchy. Mine didn't fit, and Caroline insisted it was because I hadn't taken care of myself at school. When we finally gathered for the photo, Caroline angled everyone strategically, Dylan in the center. Ruby leaning into Caroline, Gregory with a hand on Dylan's shoulder. I was placed on the edge, cropped by the frame, half-shadowed by the living room lamp. When the photo went online later, the caption read, "My beautiful family, blessed beyond measure." People commented heart emojis and compliments. No one noticed I was barely in the picture. That winter night, while everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house was dark except for the microwave clock blinking 2:14 a.m. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator and wondered when I had become a background character in my own home. I didn't know it then, but this feeling of being replaceable would come back later with a vengeance. After college, I started working at Novatech. It was supposed to be my escape route. A tech job, a stable income, a chance to build a life that wasn't shrinking around my family's shadows. I threw myself into work, arriving early, staying late, volunteering for projects no one wanted. Mason, my coworker, used to tease that I was single-handedly holding up the building. He didn't know I was trying to outrun something, to earn the right to breathe. But the more I worked, the more my family siphoned off. Caroline discovered Zelle and treated it like her personal lifeline. Gregory started referring to me as our safety net, as if it were a title I should be proud of. Dylan's streaming career kept failing, and each failure came with a request for a new investment. Ruby apologized more often, but her apologies were as temporary as the payments she needed. My life became a cycle. Paycheck in, family out, rent, utilities, groceries. My own needs slipped further down the list every month. I packed leftovers from work events to stretch my food budget. I sold old electronics. I let myself believe this was temporary. But every month, the requests grew. I remember one night vividly. Summer heat pressed against my apartment windows, cicadas buzzing outside like electricity. I was sitting at my tiny kitchen table, still in my Novatech hoodie, reviewing blueprints for a product launch. My eyes ached from hours of work. Then my phone lit up. It was Dylan. "Hey, sis," he began. So my mic broke and I closed my eyes. "Dylan, I can't keep." He cut me off. "Wow. Okay. Didn't realize helping family was such a burden." The guilt was instant, automatic. "Learned. I'll send what I can," I whispered. After the call, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. I didn't look tired. I looked hollow, like someone scraped out everything inside me and left only obligation. I didn't know it then, but my body had already started sending warnings. Little ones at first: tightness in my chest, dizziness when I stood up too fast, headaches that pulsed behind my eyes. I ignored them all. The night before everything fell apart, I stayed at the office until nearly 11 p.m. The building was almost empty, humming with fluorescent lights and the low buzz of the air conditioner. My vision blurred. The edges darkened. I took a step and felt the floor tilt. I thought I could push through it. I always had. But some debts can't be paid with endurance. And mine was about to come due. The days leading up to my collapse weren't a sudden disaster. They were a slow, grinding erosion. Little cuts that didn't bleed until they all did at once. Looking back, I can trace every fracture. Every moment where I should have stepped away but stayed because that's what I was trained to do. Endure. Forgive. Repeat. It began at Novatech on a Monday morning that smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. I arrived before most of my team, like always. The office was quiet, a soft hum of servers, and the distant rattle of the elevator cables. I booted up my computer and opened a project folder that felt heavier than it should have. A new deadline had appeared, moved up by 2 full weeks. No warning, no explanation, just red text flashing like a dare. When Mason arrived, he stopped by my desk, brow furrowed. They moved the timeline again? Lena, that's insane. I shrugged, trying to bury the pinch of anxiety in my ribs. It's fine. I'll make it work. You always make it work, he said quietly. That's the problem. He meant it kindly, but the words scraped something raw inside me. Being dependable had become my entire identity, not because I wanted it, but because the alternative was being forgotten. People like me don't get to fail. We just get tired. By midweek, my chest started to ache more often, a small, sharp burn that flared whenever stress spiked. I ignored it. The project needed to be finished. My family needed my paycheck. My life ran on obligations. That Wednesday, Caroline texted me a photo of a broken dishwasher with the caption, "This is why your father is stressed all the time." As if that was my problem to fix. As if their appliances were my responsibility. I replied, "I'm busy at work right now. Can we talk later?" She responded instantly, "Don't be dramatic. It's just a small thing. We're not asking for much." But they always were. That evening, while I was still at the office, Dylan called. "Guess what?" he said, voice excited. "My stream hit 200 viewers today." "That's great," I said, rubbing my temples. "Yeah, well, my lighting setup is trash. If I want to grow, I need the new LED panels. They're only like $700. "Dylan," I whispered, "I'm already covering." "Oh, come on, Lena. Don't start acting selfish. You make way more than me." The irony burned. I made more because I worked myself to the edge of collapse. I made more because I sacrificed sleep, weekends, mental stability. I made more because I had to. But explaining that felt pointless. "Fine," I said. "I'll see what I can do." When I hung up, the office was silent, except for the buzzing of a flickering light above me. I sat there, staring at the computer screen until the characters blurred. My chest throbbed again, hard enough that I had to steady myself against the desk. I should have gone home then. Maybe things would have been different. But should have wasn't part of the Hartley vocabulary. Friday arrived soaked in exhaustion. Novatech was hosting a team meeting, and I forced myself to smile through it. My boss praised my work ethic, said I was the backbone of the project. Everyone clapped. No one saw my hands trembling under the table. After the meeting, Mason pulled me aside. "You look pale," he said. "When was the last time you slept?" "I don't know," I admitted. He studied me, concern etched across his face. "You can't keep doing this." But the problem was I didn't know how to stop. That night, I got a message from Ruby. "Can you help me with rent? I messed up my budgeting this month. Please don't tell Mom." I transferred the money before even replying. Then she sent a selfie from a rooftop bar. Smiling, drink in hand. I stared at it for a long time. Later, around 10 p.m., while I was still at my desk trying to finish my design draft, another text came. "Gregory, call me. Important." I called him immediately, heart already racing. He answered with a sigh heavy enough to drown me. "The mortgage is late again. Your mother is upset." I swallowed. "Dad, I already helped last month." "That was last month," he snapped. "Stop throwing it in my face. You're part of this family. You don't get to pick and choose when you help." My vision blurred at the edges. Lights swirled. "I'll try," I whispered. "You'll do more than try," he said, and hung up. I sat there frozen, staring at my phone as if it had personally betrayed me. The room spun. the walls pressing inward, my breath catching like something was lodged in my throat. Mason found me minutes later, slumped over my desk. "Lena," he said, shaking my shoulder. "Hey, are you okay?" I tried to answer, but my words tangled together. A wave of dizziness swept through me, and darkness folded over the edges of my vision. I remember thinking, briefly, absurdly, I can't pass out. I still have work to finish. Then the floor rose to meet me. The next thing I knew, people were shouting, footsteps rushing. Someone called 911. Mason knelt beside me, pale and shaking, his hand on mine. "Stay with me," he kept saying. "Lena, stay with me." But I had already slipped far, far beyond the place where obligation lived. Waking up in the hospital should have been the turning point, but in my family, rock bottom always has a basement. The first 24 hours blurred into white walls, IV drips, and the constant beep of a monitor reminding me my heart was still trying. A nurse told me they'd contacted my emergency contacts Gregory and Caroline. Neither picked up. "We left 3 voicemails," she said gently, as if preparing me for grief. But grief wasn't what came. A numbness spread through me instead, like frost creeping across glass. On the second day, Mason visited after work. He stood awkwardly at the doorway, holding a plastic grocery bag full of snacks and a notebook. "I didn't know what you liked," he said, "so I got everything that didn't require cooking." I managed a weak laugh. "That's perfect." He didn't hover or ask invasive questions. He just sat in the chair, shoes tapping the linoleum, and said, "You scared the hell out of me." I looked away. I scared myself. When he left, the room felt colder. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the past months like they were someone else's memories. The late-night calls, the transfers, the guilt. My family's voices overlapped in my head until I had to press my palms against my ears to make it stop. On the third day, the nurse brought me my phone. Everything inside me twisted. I didn't want to look, but I did. The first notification that popped up wasn't a missed call. It was a tag. A photo from Caroline's Instagram. The Hartleys at the beach. Blue sky, sparkling water. Smiling faces glowing under the sun. Dylan holding a lemonade. Ruby flashing a peace sign. Gregory with an arm around Caroline. Beer bottle dangling casually from his hand. The caption read, "Just the peaceful ones today." My breath hitched. My vision stung. Something inside me cracked so sharply the monitor beside me reacted, numbers spiking in alarm. I zoomed in. No guilt in their eyes. No empty space where I should have been. Just a curated moment, perfectly staged, like I had never existed. A nurse poked her head in. "Do you need anything?" I swallowed hard. "No," I whispered. "I think I've had enough." By the fourth day, the silence ended not because they cared, but because something went wrong for them. My phone buzzed nonstop. 74 missed calls. A single text from Gregory. "We need you. Don't make this harder." Not a "how are you?" Not a "we heard you're in the hospital." Just a command. Urgent. Self-serving. Something simmered in me then, anger. Clarity. Maybe both. Whatever it was, it felt like waking up for the first time in years. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled to the one person who'd never asked anything of me. Walter. When he picked up, his voice was steady. "I'm on my way." He arrived 40 minutes later, carrying his old leather satchel and smelling faintly of pine soap. He sat beside my bed without asking questions. "They finally broke you, huh?" he said. I let out a shaky breath. "Guess so." He didn't hug me. He wasn't the hugging type. But he reached for my hand, and that simple gesture nearly undid me. By evening, he had already spoken to my nurse, reviewed my charts, asked about insurance coverage, and flagged charges I hadn't noticed. When a billing clerk walked in with a clipboard full of additional expenses, Walter stood up so calmly it was almost threatening. "We won't be paying for anything that isn't itemized," he said. The clerk blinked. "Sir, this is standard." "No," Walter interrupted. "Standard is clarity. Try again." She left red-faced. Later, he pulled out his tablet. "Let's take stock," he said, like we were auditing a company instead of my life. We went through everything. Auto-pays I didn't remember setting up. Transfers labeled, "just this month." Joint accounts I didn't know still existed. A utilities bill under my name for the Hartley house. My stomach twisted deeper with each discovery. How did I let this happen? I whispered. Walter's voice softened. Because you thought it was love. They thought it was obligation. Different math. That night, long after the halls went quiet and the nurses switched shifts, Walter created a spreadsheet. Each line item was a tiny wound. By the time he finished, I barely recognized my own financial life. Tomorrow, he said, we start cutting cords. The next morning, I called my bank from the hospital. The representative recognized my name. "Oh, Miss Hartley, you're our most consistent autopay client," she chirped. My throat tightened. Not anymore. One by one, the cords snapped. Dylan's streaming fund gone. Ruby's rent deposit gone. Caroline's utilities, insurance, subscriptions, all gone. Gregory's overdraft protection, which I unknowingly covered, terminated. Every click felt like breathing for the first time. But freedom has consequences. Caroline texted first. "We just heard you were in the hospital. Why didn't you tell us sooner?" The fake sweetness in her tone made my skin crawl. Then Dylan, "Is something wrong with my payment?" Followed minutes later by, "Don't ignore me. That's messed up." Ruby tried a softer angle. "I know they can be overwhelming, but don't punish me for their mistakes." She had used the same line when she asked me to co-sign her lease. I let the messages pile up. Walter sat beside me, flipping a newspaper open. "Feeling guilty yet?" he asked. "A little," I admitted. "It'll pass," he said. "Guilt is the tax good people pay before freedom." If only it ended there. But my family, the Hartleys, they never stopped when they felt cornered. They escalated. 2 days after I finally left the hospital, I walked into my apartment and found Gregory waiting in his car outside. Engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly I could see the strain from the window above. He didn't text. He didn't call. He just stared at my building like he was willing me to come down. I didn't. An hour later, a new message arrived. "You're about to destroy everything we built. I hope you understand what you're doing." Everything we built. As if I had ever been a partner in their choices. As if I hadn't been the one patching every hole they punched in their own lives. I read the message twice, then set my phone down. A strange calm washed over me, chilling and electric. The Hartleys thought this was the beginning of a fight. They had no idea it was the beginning of my freedom. The night everything detonated didn't begin with shouting. It began with a notification, one soft ping that sliced through the quiet of Walter's living room like a blade. I was staying with him for a few days after leaving the hospital, trying to remember how to exist without constant demands. The house smelled like cedar and old paper. Walter sat in his recliner reading the Wall Street Journal, glasses low on his nose. Outside, rain brushed the windows in thin silver streaks. Then my phone buzzed again, and again, and again. By the fifth ping, I knew it wasn't a person texting me. It was the internet. When I opened the first link, my breath caught. On the screen was Dylan in his messy streaming studio, LED lights glowing blue behind him, speaking directly into the camera. "Hey guys," he began, voice thick with rehearsed sorrow. "I wasn't going to talk about this, but it's about my sister Lena." My stomach dropped. He sighed dramatically. "She's been off. Like, mentally unstable. We've all been so worried. She cut off communication, cut off everyone in our family, and honestly, we're scared for her." He pressed a hand to his forehead, shaking it just enough to look anguished. His viewers flooded the chat with sympathetic emojis. I felt something inside me tremble: anger, disbelief, humiliation, too many emotions to name. He continued, "We tried helping her, but she pushed us away. She's not well, and she needs support before she hurts herself or someone else." Walter looked up from his chair, eyes sharp. "What's that?" I turned the screen toward him. His jaw tightened, not in surprise, more like confirmation. He had seen this playbook before. I clicked the next notification. Caroline's Instagram video. She sat at the kitchen table, wearing a soft pink sweater, her concerned mother costume. Her voice quivered just enough to seem fragile. "We've been dealing with a family crisis," she began. "Our daughter Lena, she's struggling emotionally. We've tried to reach her, but she blocked all of us. We're heartbroken." Then came the dagger. "If you see her, please encourage her to come home. We just want to help." In the background of the video, Gregory walked past the camera, rubbing his temples dramatically, sighing like a man crushed by sorrow. The comments cascaded. "So sorry, honey. Prayers for your daughter. Stay strong, mama." I felt sick. Walter lowered his paper completely now. They're using public sympathy as leverage. Typical. But the worst was still loading. At the bottom of my feed, a video titled, "The Truth About My Sister," posted by Ruby. I didn't want to watch it, but I did. Ruby sat in her dorm room, eyes red and puffy, maybe from crying, maybe from makeup. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I love Lena so much," she sniffed. "But she's not herself anymore. And I'm scared. We all are. She said some really scary things to us, things she didn't mean." I felt my lungs tighten. I had said nothing to any of them. Nothing at all. And Ruby hesitated. "I don't know how she'll react when she sees this, but I can't keep hiding it. She needs help." Walter exhaled slowly. "They're setting the stage for something. A conservatorship, maybe, or at least enough public pressure to force you back into compliance." I blinked at him. "Can they?" "They can try," he said, "but they won't succeed." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed one more time, this one marked urgent. It was from Nora, my lawyer. "Nora, you need to see what your family has filed. Check your email. Now." My hands trembled as I opened my inbox. There it was, an attached PDF titled, "Emergency Petition for Temporary Conservatorship, the Hartley Family v. Lena Hartley." My heart thudded so loudly, I felt it in my throat. I opened the document, scanning the lies written in cold legal text. Emotional instability, erratic behavior, financial irresponsibility, potential danger to herself. The boldest lie, the one that almost made me laugh, was the claim that I had threatened to harm myself if my family didn't leave me alone. I had said nothing, not a single word. They were preparing to take everything. My autonomy, my accounts, my decisions, my life. Walter took the tablet from my hands, lips pressed in a thin line. This was their plan all along. Control. When the money dried up, they switched strategies. Something inside me shifted then. A cold resolve grew roots where pain had been. I stood up slowly. My legs shook, but not from weakness. From clarity. "We're fighting this," I said. Walter's eyes softened, not with pity, but with pride. "Of course we are," Nora called moments later. Her voice was sharp, calculated, furious on my behalf. "I've already filed a counter motion," she said. "Your medical evaluations confirm you're stable. Your employer verified your performance. And the evidence we found about your mother's credit application? It kills their case before it begins." I sank onto the couch, pulse racing. "What now?" "Now," Nora said, "we let their lies expose themselves." By morning, the internet had begun turning. A TikTok stitched Dylan's live stream with Caroline's beach photo from the exact day I was hospitalized. Caption: "They're worried now?" Comment sections flipped like a switch. People dragged them for inconsistency, manipulation, and attention-seeking. Screenshots surfaced. Old receipts, Caroline's shopping hauls, Dylan's late-night comments about milking followers. Their public support crumbled in hours. But the moment everything truly snapped, the moment the climax solidified, was when Gregory himself showed up. He stood outside Walter's front door, drenched from the rain, fist balled against the wood as he pounded again and again. "Lena," he shouted, "open this door. We need to talk." Walter stepped forward and opened it just enough to block the entrance. Gregory's face was red, twisted in a fury I'd only ever seen turn toward other people. "Where is she?" he demanded. Walter didn't blink. "Not available. You're poisoning her against us. She's doing just fine on her own." Gregory's eyes darted past him and landed on me. His breath hitched with something wild, fear or rage, or both. "You think you can do this to us?" he snarled. "After everything we've done for you?" A laugh escaped me, then a quiet, cold sound I barely recognized as my own. "Everything you've done for me?" I said. "No, Dad. This is everything I've done for you. And it's over." His mouth opened, ready to fire another blow. But I closed the door. And for the first time in my life, the silence was mine. The door's heavy thud echoed through Walter's house long after Gregory's shouting faded into the rain. I stood there, my hand still on the knob, feeling the tremor of something shifting inside me. Not fear, not guilt, something sharper, cleaner. The beginning of distance. The first breath of freedom after years of suffocating. Walter placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "They won't stop," he said. "People like them rarely do." "I know," I replied. "But I'm done playing defense. We spent the next morning at Nora's office, a quiet space filled with neat stacks of case files and the soft clicking of her keyboard. She slid a folder across the desk toward me. "I gathered everything," she said. "Bank statements, transaction histories, screenshots of your family's posts, and," she added, tapping a sealed document, "your mother's attempted credit application in your name." The weight of that evidence was almost physical. A paper trail of every betrayal I had excused, minimized, absorbed. "What happens now?" I asked. Nora leaned back. "Now? We protect you. And we give them enough rope to hang their own narrative." Walter nodded. "The truth always outlives the performance." As we spoke, my phone vibrated nonstop in my bag, calls from unknown numbers, messages from distant relatives suddenly concerned, voice notes from Ruby begging me to just talk. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I signed the documents. Nora prepared a cease and desist, a no-contact order, a formal notice waiving my claim to any future Hartley assets. It felt like closing a book that had been bleeding onto every page of my life. Outside the law office, the air smelled like cold pavement and the faintest trace of winter. Walter handed me a manila envelope I hadn't seen before. "What's this?" I asked. He looked at me with a softness I rarely saw. "Something I set up years ago, for when you were ready." Inside was paperwork for a trust fund, one he'd built quietly, steadily, without telling anyone. My name was on every page. "It's time," he said simply. A laugh slipped out of me, light and disbelieving. Not because of the money, but because for the first time, someone had invested in me without expecting anything in return. We walked to his car together, and as I opened the passenger door, a thought settled over me like fresh snow. They thought they could break me into coming home. They didn't realize they'd just given me the one weapon I needed. In the weeks that followed, I packed lightly and left with Walter for Colorado, trading noise for mountains and obligations for air I could finally breathe. Some nights, the past still tugged at me, but it no longer owned me. I chose myself, and that choice felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, I hope my story reminds you that leaving isn't weakness, it's survival. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe. This story isn't over.